Have you ever felt lost, untethered, searching for something more? Welcome to Angelic Footprints, where the spirit meets the road on a journey to self-healing and rediscovery. I'm Dagmar, your host, psychic medium and seasoned traveler. Each week, we'll explore the world of angels and personal transformation. We're going to dive into compelling histories and captivating mythology. You're going to hear remarkable, real-life angel encounters and discover how you too can connect with the angels guiding your path. Whether it's through practical tips, meditation techniques, or stories that resonate deeply, Angelic Footprints is here to light your way. From mystical journeys to profound self-discovery, let's embark on this transformative journey together. Are you ready to find your angelic guide? Then subscribe to Angelic Footprints today and step into a world where angels walk beside you every step of the way. Angels, spirituality, healing. Let's ignite your transformation. Hello and welcome to all the listeners to the Angelic Footprints podcast. Today I have a wonderful guest with me. Her name is Shelly Edwards Jorgensen, and she is the author of a book entitled Beautiful Ashes, a true story of murder, betrayal, and one woman's search for peace. Now, Shelly, she has had a lot of experience with angels, but I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about that because she was just telling me some very interesting information. And Shelly, I would absolutely love you to tell us about a little bit about your background and how this book of yours came about. Please tell us.
First of all, thanks for having me. And just to launch right into this, I grew up with domestic violence. And so when I was 15, my dad, who was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde alcoholic, ended up murdering my mother and burning our house down. And and then things got worse. But along the way, with all this trauma, I've had to overcome a lot of things. And that's just the very tip of the iceberg of what I've experienced. The hand of God has been in my life the whole time. And because we're talking about angelic experiences, I'll skip all the backstory of what got me to that point. And I also talk about these experiences in the book. And so my mother was my number one champion and my safety, my security, my everything. And as you can imagine, as a teenager, and it was a very public experience because I literally was watching my house on fire on the 11 o'clock news and reading about my life in the newspaper while I was living with my father. And because he was not arrested right away, I was a sophomore in high school. And so 2 weeks after my mom's murder, which was consequently or coincidentally, it was 39 years ago yesterday. So 2 weeks later, after the funeral, I'm at my very first basketball game after, and I was a 3-sport athlete, and my mom never missed anything. And so it was a very tough time, and we're at a opposing team's gym, so it wasn't even familiar gym. And I steal the ball, and I'm on a breakaway, and all of a sudden I hear cheering in the stands that sounds familiar. And so I look up in the stands, and as I look, I feel my mother's presence. I see her, and I'm hearing her cheering for me.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh, I'm 15. I don't even know that this is possible. I brick the shot. The ball's bouncing off. And then as the ball's bouncing off and I'm trying to reconcile, did this just happen to me? Again, my mother's presence washes over me. I feel her so strongly. And I hear her say, Shelly, I love you, and everything will be okay.
Can I just ask, how long had she been passed at this point?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. That's incredible.
Yeah, 2 weeks. And so right at this time, so this is my first time back at school. So then we had moved into the house that my best friend lived in when I was growing up. She had like 2 years earlier moved to a different house in our same neighborhood, and the family that bought it from them were just transferred out of country for a work assignment, actually to the UK. My dad rented the house. So now I'm living in a house that's sitting on a hill overlooking my house that's burned out shell, where I knew my mother was murdered, but I didn't want to acknowledge that yet. My dad hadn't been arrested for that yet, but I knew the moment that my mother was, I want to say, missing, that my dad killed her and did this because he had threatened to do it my whole life. And so now I'm living in this house. I'm having these reoccurring nightmares because I was the last one home. And why did I leave and that kind of thing. And so it was really hard time for me. I was really, really struggling. So I had that grace that my mom says that, but I'm just like, that couldn't have happened. So now it's the beginning of December, and I'm Christmas shopping at the mall. And so I'm going past Baker Shoes, which was my mom's favorite shoe shop in the mall, and she loves shoes and handbags. I'm going past the mall opening, and I look in there, and I swore I saw my mother, and I'm like, oh. So I like practically run around this planter to go inside this store. When I get in there, there's no one in there. And not even the workers. The workers were in the back. And I'm just like, oh, I hope no one saw me like look like a crazy fool running around this planter to get in this store. So now I'm walking out of the store. And again, my mother's presence washes over me. And it's, Shelly, I love you, and everything will be okay. Her voice, her presence. Again, I'm 15 years old, and I'm thinking, I can't tell anybody this is happening. Am I losing my mind? Everything in this time period was so surreal. By this point, my dad had started sending me back to the house to get canned goods out of the basement, which was a horror show, and it was bad. And so fast forward another month, and I'm laying in bed. I'm just miserable. I'm having reoccurring nightmares at this time. I can't sleep. And I'm laying on my left side with my back to the door, and I'm just miserable, wanting to die. And next thing you know, my room starts to light up. And I'm thinking, oh, Lisa, that's my sister's name. Or my dad opened the door and the light's bleeding in from the hall. Well, no, that's not what would happen. So I roll over. Next thing you know, again, my room is filled with light. And there's my mother standing there. I feel her presence. I'm seeing her. And the same message is, Shelly, I love you, and everything will be okay. And then she was gone. So again, I'm 15 and I'm not telling anybody that this is happening because I didn't know that it was possible. So those were the first 3 experiences that I had with my mother. And she was allowed to give me that message because that is what I held on to for a very long time. And it wasn't okay, but I could trust her. And I didn't understand or actually technically believe her because of all the crap that was going on, and then that continued to go on for years. But it was, I guess I did believe her to a degree. I believed my mother's words, and that anchored me enough to survive what I had to endure. I've had so many experiences I can't even tell you, and it was my mother who wanted me to write this book.
Well, I mean, you've come out of this with your mother's love, giving you reassurance. I really hope our listeners do read the book. My question is, though, how long was it that you were living with your father before he was arrested?
Okay, so it happened October 14th, 1985 is when my mom's murder and fire was. Then he was not arrested. We were questioned the next morning at the police station. Anyway, the 11 o'clock news is announcing on Monday night. It was Monday the 14th that there was a dead 50-year-old woman, and the fire is suspicious. So they knew immediately that it was arson. But my dad was not arrested until February. And my sister, I was a sophomore in high school. My sister was a senior in high school. So we're teenagers. We're living with my father. His trial was not for another 2 years after his arrest. It wasn't until February of 1988.
So were you living with him the whole time?
hmm I extradited myself. My sister graduated, and we still were living with him right before my senior year of high school. So maybe the last 6 months, I lived in California with my friend's family. I moved myself, but my sister and I had zero help from Child Protective Services or anybody of that nature.
That's quite extraordinary when you think about it. And this is such a tragic story, and that you have come through it so well, obviously, with the help of your mother bringing you those lovely messages, but at the same time, you still had real life challenges to
hmm
endure. With the experiences that you've had, you were telling me also that you spoke to a lovely lady from the university, and that there's a bit of a theme going on with murder and the kind of scenarios and situations that other people have experienced as well. Would you tell our listeners a little bit about that, please?
Sure. I've done lots of podcasts at this point, and early on, I met a lady named Jan Canty, and she does a podcast called The Domino Effects of Murder. And she is also a homicide survivor, and she also has her PhD in psychology. So, actually, the same year my mother was murdered, she was graduating with her PhD from Wayne State University, and her husband was several years older than her, and he was murdered that same year. And so Jan is a phenomenal resource because she's both a surviving victim of homicide, and she's a therapist. And so now fast forward, 39 years later, and so she, during the course of her podcast of interviewing homicide survivors, she's noticed a pattern, and even with my pattern of talking about my mom's visits, and which, I only told you 3. I can't even tell you how many experiences. So Jan noticed a pattern. And so in her second book that she wrote, it's called What Now, which is a resource for homicide and suicide survivors, which I think every single police agency in the world should be handing out, because it's kind of like a survival guide for people who have experienced that. She quoted me in that. And then she started noticing that a lot of people with homicide and suicide in their families have had angelic experiences. And so now she's working on a research project with the University of Virginia, and she's working on her third book, Rekindled. And I'm not sure what the release date is, but it's all about these experiences specific to people that have survived somebody in their life being murdered or committing suicide. I believe there's 10 other people, or there's a total of 10 of us that our stories are in there. There's also some of the technical stuff about the experiences and the phenomenon that happens with people that have these experiences.
Well, as we said before, it's not the kind of thing that's an easy topic to talk about. But by the same token, it sounds like our spirit people, and whether that's our loved ones or whether that's angels, are coming in at a time when we need to really connect with them, when we really need to hear their message. If you think about the experiences that you've had, especially with your mother or any other angelic experiences, you told us about 3 of those, but thinking about some of those other experiences, would you say that they came in at a time when you especially needed that kind of reassurance?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say this is faith precedes the miracle. So if you believe it can happen, then you have a more likely chance of it happening than if you don't believe it can happen, because you'll dismiss it. And that was another thing that when I've had private discussions with Jan is she realized that even in her own experience at the time, she didn't recognize the signs that she was having that her husband was communicating with her. And so sometimes when you're having these interactions with past loved ones or angels or whatever, you're not necessarily aware or cognizant of the subtleties of some of the communications that happen. And so I would assume that most people that are listening to us on this podcast are actually aware that this is a real thing and that it happens. And I can testify to you that our loved ones that passed, they are involved in our lives. They counseled together to aid us. And, the spirit world is really not some distant place. It's right beyond the veil of what we can see. And so they're heavily involved in your life and love you. And, I know my mother has never missed a thing in my life. I didn't fully comprehend that when I was younger, but I know that now because of all the other experiences I've had with my mom.
Shelley, you've just given us such a beautiful gift. Thank you so much. Your message about faith, preceding what we believe, and we have to believe so that it can really come to fruition. That is so powerful. And I don't doubt there are some people listening to the show who may have elements of doubt, but it's when we hear through these stories, these experiences, that I really want to bring this home to people, how powerful this is. As you say, it's just beyond the veil. It is real. And there are so many people who are experiencing it. And I just want to bring that to more people. That's what I really want to do. And, you sharing your story and your experiences hopefully will bring people healing in many, many ways. Let me ask you, I know that you've had in your own way a horror story, but out of all of that, what would you say would be the message that you would like to impart to people out of this awful, awful experience? What is your takeaway? What is your message that you want to share with others?
Well, my message is, and I'm sharing my story to give others hope in their own journey through adversity, because everybody has adversity. And that's also why, like, I do book clubs. So if people read my book and they want me to zoom into their book club, I do that because then they can ask me their own personal questions of how did I overcome this or how did I overcome that? Because my goal is to help give others hope. And what I've found in adversity is a gift. You have to come to a mindset where you can see all adversity as a gift because it's an opportunity for growth. Energy can't be created or destroyed. So you can't convert anything to a positive if you don't have a negative to begin with or something to begin with. It could be neutral, but you can make that grow. So what I've learned through this though is that a lot of people, especially people that have had a lot of trauma, they don't even believe that it's possible to overcome it. And so I'm trying to be a voice to say, I've experienced this and a whole host of other things. The same year my mother was murdered, I was raped twice. I've had major health issues. I've had a lot. It's about hope. So first, it's possible to heal. Second, you're worth it. And third is learning how to trust God's plan for you and that there's a purpose in all things, regardless of whether we can fully understand it or not.
Shelley, thank you. That is such a powerful message. And, when we're going through these experiences, whether it's trauma or challenges, we don't always see that. We don't see that kind of lesson or that blessing in some way. And thank you so much for sharing that and for coming out the other side to be able to give that hope to other people. Shelley, I know that we spoke about that you've got a book, but tell me a little bit about how people can get in touch with you. What is it that you would like to share for the listeners in case they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's beautifulashesmemoir.com. There's a link to contact me, which is through my email, which is beautifulashesmemoir@gmail.com. So you can connect through my website. There's connections to Amazon for my book. Basically, the book is anywhere that books are sold. And seriously, I am open. My whole mission in life is to help others. So if people want to reach out to me and ask me questions, or, invite me to their book club, or just anything, I want to be a resource to help people. And so, yes, reach out, beautifulashesmemoir.com.
Thank you, Shelley. And for any of you listening, please do get in touch with Shelley, especially if you've had an experience that you'd like to talk about. Do you do any kind of healing or coaching at all, Shelley, or is it just a conversation that people have with you?
Yeah, it's just a conversation. I'm not officially trained in Reiki or any of those other modalities, although I've had enough experience. That's the other thing, is there's not one size fits all in healing, because I did regular talk therapy for 15 years and was still praying to die every day. But when I started doing, well, actually NET, which was neuro emotional technique, that saved my life. But, EMDR, I've done NET, biofeedback, done neurofeedback, I've done Reiki and cranial sacral work, and the list goes on. And all of those things are really, in my mind, the holistic side of things is a lot more powerful for emotional healing. I mean, there's a place for talking and there's a place for that, but really the modalities that saved me were not those.
And sometimes it is just about having that acknowledgement, isn't it, of someone saying, do you know what? I really understand what's going on and I'm hearing you. And we want to just have that recognition that we're not
Mhm.
going crazy. Like that 15-year-old you, I bet, if you would have had someone who you could really have trusted to say, I've seen my mother and she's come to me, wouldn't that have been wonderful? At least we're living in this kind of age where we're doing podcasts and we're having those conversations to help people to heal. So, Shelley, thank you so much for being on the show. Do you have any last messages at all?
Just believe in yourself and believe that there's a plan for you, and that, the veil is thin and heaven is real, and spiritual beings are a part of our everyday life, whether we are aware of it or not.
They absolutely are. And it never fails to amaze me how many times I get my own messages just at that time when I need them. But this show has been about you for our listeners. Thank you once again, Shelley. If you found this episode valuable, then please share the information about the show with 3 people who you believe would find it beneficial. If you really enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on the platform where you're listening. Until the next episode, blessings, and may your life be filled with hope and inspiration.